No, guys, welcome to African Net Channel. Today we're speaking the on Pidgin language as the one of the way of communicating within people or among people of West Africa. So as we proceed in this video, kindly like, kindly share, kindly subscribe to African Net. So I guess people in West Africa actually are very much familiar with the Pidgin word or with the Pidgin language, which is a form of communication or a form of language being used by people who live or who base or who are from majorly West Africa, and this includes Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Pidgin language actually evolved between the 16th to 19th century. That's during the 16th century. This was during the particular time when the Portuguese were having or were trading with countries along the coast of West Africa, which means they are trading with countries very, very close to the coastline or the Atlantic Ocean of West Africa, which bounds West Africa. So, and between the 17th to 18th century, which the Pidgin language actually evolved. This was during the Trans-Sahara slave trade. That was when Africans were being sold out as slaves to European countries. So when we are talking about Pidgin language is actually, or let's say, it's a language being spoken by non-European. Actually, the English, let's say the language actually is called Crawley or whatever it's being called. The non-European English or broken English being spoken by non-Europeans, not only spoken by West African actually. It's also spoken by Jamaicans, people from Hawaii, and some, let's say, some black nations, which are actually not in Africa. So, as we have what is being called Pidgin language here, it's being called Clear in Cameroon. Since Cameroon is actually a country, it's a bilingual country, which means they have two official language in Cameroon, just like we have English here. So in Cameroon, they have English and French, which means they have two official languages, which is a form of major communication within Cameroon, just like we have Pidgin language, English, which is a general means of communication within Africa, within Nigeria, I mean. So in Cameroon now, the southern part of Cameroon actually speaks English, while the northern part of Cameroon actually speaks French. So since they both have um, two official language, they came with a means of communication which is being called Canfongle. So Canfongle means it actually have two, let's say, two official language being made one. So it consists of English and French. So here in Nigeria, Pidgin language actually is majorly made of English since I've been colonized by the British basically. So it's been made of English with it's a means of communication within the current population of Nigeria, which is currently 209 million people. So with this language, Pidgin language, being in Africa, being in Nigeria, we can virtually communicate with over 209 people in Nigeria. So looking at Pidgin language also, the Pidgin language actually, when it comes to speaking of West Africa majorly, the Pidgin language actually came from different su- uh, European languages, which includes English, the French, just like I listed earlier. Canfranglais, that's French and the English being combined in Cameroon. So it means we have French. Uh, I mean, Pidgin English consists of French majorly, French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and some foreign or let's say European languages actually made up this broken English, like Portuguese, for example, which is majorly used in Nigeria, like Sabi. Sabi means no. Why this particular word Sabi actually comes from a Portuguese word, which means I know. And thereabouts, also we'll be talking about, I'll be giving a later example about Pidgin English, that's come from where basically, and the Pidgin English we have here in Nigeria. So Pidgin English being a major, when the Europeans, let's say when BBC News also discovered that your Pidgin English is actually very rampant among people in, yes, I'm using Pidgin English for my presentation. When BBC Africa, let's say, the European noticed we are using Pidgin English as a means of communication in West Africa, they also came up with this so-called BBC Pidgin. So people living or people residing in West Africa can virtually listen to news. And Pidgin language also is being used as a primary language, as a major language, since some people don't really understand this English word of a thing, don't speak good English. Some people major way of communication is speaking English, since they can't speak their, what are they calling it, their indigenous language perfectly, neither can they speak English language perfectly. So they instead prefer to speak Pidgin, which the estimate says that between 5 to 7 million Nigerians actually speaks Pidgin English as their primary language. But the actual number of speakers of Pidgin English in West Africa ranges between 75 million to 100 million. And Cameroon, they also have this TV called the Equinox TV, which is a, let's say it's a news channel, broadcasting channel, which use majorly with Pidgin English. They do majorly with Pidgin English. That's the Equinox TV in Cameroon. Also, Pidgin English actually has been a course, have become like, just like we have English language as a course, we have Yoruba language, we have Igbo, we have Hausa as a major course here, just like we study Pidgin English here in Nigeria. Camerooners or people from Cameroon also take Pidgin English as a course, and they are also being taught in classes using Pidgin English. Basically, that's one of the things I want to say about Pidgin English. So, um, giving an example of Pidgin English here, just like commots, as we say here in in Nigeria, it means go, but in Cranford, it means je go, means go. I know Sabi in Nigerian Pidgin English means I don't know, but in French, that's in Cameroon, they call it, and they mean je know, that means they don't know. Just like we have how na, which means how are you. Here it means it's how, it is how, that means how are you in Pidgin English in Cranford. In Nigeria, we say Messi Uncho, which means what do you eat? What have you eaten? But in Kamfonge, it is being with adventure. That means what have you eaten in Kamfonge? And I also want to say this as in addition with this Pidgin English, since Pidgin English, since most people can't communicate, I guess Pidgin English actually should be one of a particular way which we members of West Africa should be able to communicate with each other. So thank you very much for attending this live rise. We'll be looking forward. Probably next week we'll be talking about the Afrikaans language, how the Afrikaans language came up, just like it evolved. Actually, just like more like Pidgin English in, just like we have Pidgin here in West Africa. We also have the Afrikaans actually in South Africa. Although I speak a little bit of Afrikaans, that's Afrikaans, a little mix of Portuguese. Afrikaans is actually a little mix of Portuguese and French and sorry and English, just like Danke and the rest. So just like we have Pidgin English here in Nigeria, we have Afrikaans there in South Africa. So that will be the next topic which we'll be talking about next week. Thank you so much, guys, for attending this live video. We see you next week on our next topic, which is the Afrikaans language, how it evolved and how it came about, which is also the, let's say, the youngest language in the world. And, and we'll see you about that. Thank you very much. Kindly like, subscribe, comments, and also give a feedback about this video. Thank you very much, guys. See you guys next week.